This is Paul Levy here, Senior Lecturer at the University of Brighton, currently starting my day quite early in Pavilion Gardens in Brighton, my favourite cafe. Everybody's waking up here. And just offering some very practical advice about how to get started when you are looking for potential new markets for your business or for a particular product in terms of a different country, and how do you get started researching that. Now, I'm just back from the country of Slovenia. Just noises opening this cafe here. I'm just back from Slovenia, where I went to a conference about AI ethics, and I've done quite a lot of work in Slovenia over the years, and as I've got onto various networks, something I notice is I get emailed and also now messaged on Instagram, social media, about doing business in Slovenia, because obviously they're quite keen to trade. They're a fairly small country, and so there's a lot out there in terms of getting information about researching in a particular country, particularly when they're quite keen for you to take your product into their market. And I'm going to suggest one of the ways to get started then, which of course is as usual online, but also isn't necessarily online directly, is to find out who it is in that country that has got the information you might need to find out about doing business in their country for a particular product that you want to take into that country. And you have to start broad, and starting broad can be as good as Wikipedia in just terms of very broad information, but Wikipedia also has got links at the bottom of its Wikipedia page that takes you to some of the key websites, often government websites, and you have to be a bit careful there because they obviously have their own agendas as well. But you'll also find things like the Chamber of Commerce. Now, the Chamber of Commerce in a country is full of information, and a lot of it is publicly available, and you'll find it via Google as well as Wikipedia. So you can put the name of the country, Norway, plus Norwegian Chamber of Commerce, or Norway and Chamber of Commerce, and you'll find that there will be country guides there. There'll be a section on business, doing business in our country, and also who they do business with as well. You'll also find there some of the guides around what some of the rules might be around that, and certainly you've probably seen in the news in the last year, it's important to find out if doing business with that country is going to lead to certain tariffs that are added onto the price of your product, which might make it more or less viable in that country. And that particularly then relates to different industries. You'll find there are industry guides often in those countries, doing business in manufacturing in Slovenia, for example, and the Chambers of Commerce will often have produced reports. They might produce them every year. And there are also going to be government ministries that will have that too. So there might be a Ministry of Agriculture if you're in the agricultural industry. And so these are the main big organisations that you literally just look up. Secondly, of course, is with the rise of AI, we've got search engines. If you haven't used it, look up Perplexity, perplexity.ai, which is a less biased search engine. And like a lot of AI, you have to be a bit careful and you have to check it. But if you simply using the natural language you might use with Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, say, find me references on how to do business in Slovenia, you're going to find it will give you those references. And it can also summarize what's in those and say, what are the key benefits, the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, a classic SWOT analysis of doing agricultural business in a particular country, whether that's selling into that country or setting up in that country. And Perplexity will be your friend, and just like Google can be your friend, it can also be your enemy in not getting it always right. So do check those references. Always click on the links provided by those search engines and make sure it goes through to a real link. And of course, you've got to be ethical and operate within the university's rules and guidelines. So you'll find a lot of information, and that can't just be lifted and pasted into your reports. You're going to have to write that in your own words and reference it properly. But there's a lot of information out there that you can simply find from those search engines. You can also find sometimes that you can write directly by email to those chambers of commerce, to some of the organisations that are set up to encourage business happening. You'll find that there are trade organisations in particular industries. And then you'll find there are independent country reports. You'll find that the EU, the European Union, and you can just go to their websites, you'll find that there are guides. You'll find that the UK government has got guides to doing business in particular countries. And then if you go to our own library, Brighton University, and you'll find You know, if you haven't been, they're very helpful, particularly if you book a bit of time with one of the librarians to say, look, we're doing a project, we want a bit of help in the library. You'll find that getting your hands physically on those reports can be useful as well. And certain reports that provide that sort of industry intelligence that normally you would pay for, universities can get and do have subscriptions to those things. So if you look at, for example, the classic are the Mintel reports and the Keynote reports, they've got kind of intelligence reports on particular industries, and they will be an industry across the world, but what you'll find is within those reports it often has country by country figures about who the leading players are, which are the fastest growing product areas, and you can go and get those in the library, and of course you can log in virtually and with your university password register for some of those reports. So there's a lot of statistics that you can find through classic searching. You can write directly to the chambers of commerce, and bigger countries you'll find, for example, there's an Anglo-French, Anglo-Norwegian Chamber of Commerce, probably located in London. If you go on their website, you can write to people there and they can send you information that you need too. I think what you need to do is put yourselves in the shoes. Imagine that you are an entrepreneur, you are a business, and you're going to do business in that country. And think about the sort of information that you'd want to find out around the share of the market, as I mentioned, how easy it is to trade there, what the opportunities are, how competitive that market is as well. And carrying out a classic 5 forces analysis, the Porter analysis, if you look it up, you may have done that if you've done marketing or some of your business subjects, help you identify what some of the barriers to entry are, who the main suppliers are, what the dynamics of the market are. And what's useful there is you can again go onto something like Perplexity and ask it to carry out a basic competitor analysis, and it will do it for you. But once again, that stops you doing your own critical thinking, and it can be a bit general. It all depends how well you prompt it, and by the time you prompted it properly, it might well have been a good idea just to do it yourself with the information that's there. So starting off is the classic desk research, it's the classic library research. You go online, you use the search engines, but then you target it down to specific organizations in those countries that have got the intelligence, market intelligence, industry structure reports, and it's often through the government ministries. If you're in tourism though, for example, there might be tourism organizations that talk about tourism opportunities. If it's sustainability, you might find a World Sustainability Report. Once again, is country by country, and it could be that certain legislation is helpful or inhibitive to the costs of working in that country too. So it's initially library, and then it's focusing down on specific specific things like chambers of commerce and writing to those organizations. Finally, you take a look on LinkedIn. There will be experts, academic experts, who have written books, written reports about specific countries, and they're quite keen usually, they're quite enthusiastic, and if a group of students writes to them, connects with them on LinkedIn and says, could we do an interview with you, you'll find they might give you some time. It could be just typed questions, or you might get half an hour on Teams or Zoom with them as well, and that's where you can really dive deeply, because you'll get real live expert reports, as can be writing to 1 or 2 companies that have clearly got an ethos of sharing. Some are very competitive and closed, but others aren't. This can be fun, this can be really interesting, but you start with that helicopter view. Even higher up, you look at the country as if from above before you start focusing in on particular industries. So have fun with that, and of course ask your tutors, people like me, if you've got any further questions.